Okay, welcome everyone to this afternoon session on inclusive music education, building transformative music programs for students with exceptionalities. In a moment, I'm going to ask each of the panelists to introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about the work that they're doing to transform music. But I think, well, there's a recorded land acknowledgement that you've heard many times this week, but maybe what I want to say instead is that I grew up on Treaty 1 territory. I work on unceded, unsurrendered Algonquin Anishinaabe territory in Ottawa, and I think that along with a great many other people in my country, we are struggling towards understanding and material steps towards reconciliation for the intergenerational trauma that we've inflicted on the peoples of this land. So that has to inform our music making, and it has to inform all of our relationships in music, I believe. So I want to, I'm really going to moderate this panel because these are educators and I work mainly in the research and post-secondary sphere. But I want to say something a little provocative to begin with. And I'm saying it on my behalf because we have 6 people here with different ideas about music, about disability, about exceptionalities, about the work that we're doing. But the thing that I want to say at the end of this conference is that music is broken. It is not people who have a variety of physical impairments or cognitive issues they're dealing with, different modes of embodiment with which we inhabit the world. It's not our diversity of embodiment that is the problem. The problem is that music does not often create spaces for that diversity of embodiment to flourish. And that's what all the people on this panel are working towards. And we have some very different ideas about language. You know, there's a medical model of disability which puts the impetus on the individual. Individual people who have various kinds of impairments need to be accommodated or need to be fixed or healed in some way. That's a medical model. We have a social model of disability that says, no, you're not disabled until you're a wheelchair user and you get to a curb that doesn't have a curb cut and you can't continue down the street, till your environment makes it impossible for you to operate. It's that environment that causes disability. And there's a third way of thinking about disability in feminist critical disability studies, which says that no, actually, disability is a social justice issue. So on our panel, we have some people who embrace the term disability as a term of solidarity, community making, and activism. And we have some people on our panel that embrace the term exceptionality because it points to the idea of diversity, of this incredible diversity that we have as humans. And also, I would add a third classic critical disability studies term, which is interdependence. We are all interdependent. If you turned on the tap this morning and water came out, says the classic example, you were, doing that on top of many people and many systems. You were being supported. You were working interdependently. So here we're talking about music programs, strategies for pedagogy that are not setting out to fix any persons, but are perhaps, and I really didn't run this by you all, so I don't know what you think about it, but who are perhaps working to fix the systems. When I was a dean of a shiny school of music, I had a research project with a group of kids with disabilities that through a music program at Easter Seals. And I was really proud that the concert, after weeks of rehearsal, was happening in our shiny concert hall. which, to my knowledge, had never had a group of musicians with disabilities playing in it. And I thought that I knew what I was doing, and I thought it was wonderful, and weren't these lovely children, and wasn't it amazing what they were doing? And then it was Emily's turn to solo. And these were kids with quite involved and profound disabilities. Emily's job was to reach out and touch a set of chimes. It took 3 minutes for Emily to process that motor cognitive movement and to touch those chimes. And this could be a story about exceptionalism. This could be a story about how wonderful it is that Emily was able to play music in my shiny concert hall, and how cute and amazing that she got to play. It is not about that. It's about what happened in the audience. Every single person in that packed hall listened, held space for Emily, and made music of the most beautiful silence while Emily went through what Emily needed to do to be able to play her solo. And I realized there was a whole other way that music could work, that we could conceive of a concert, that we could conceive of what counts as music, and what constitutes talent, or what constitutes beauty. On every single level, what I've learned from the privilege I've had with working in some of these spaces is what we're missing when we don't make those spaces. So I'm going to turn it over to you now, and we'll start with you, Erin, and ask you to just please introduce yourself and give us a little bit of your context.
Hi, I'm Erin Parks. I'm the founder and executive director of the Lotus Center for Special Music Education. I'm a mid-height woman with dark curly hair. I am wearing a beige sweater with a black shirt underneath and red pants. Lotus Center is a charitable organization based in Ottawa, with a broad mandate to provide access to music and education and music engagement for the disability and neurodiverse community. And we work with a broad range from that population. We tend to work more with students with high needs or more on the severe, profound end of support needs. But we work with all students that need any sort of adaptive approach or want that or would benefit from that. We do music programs in the school that we have there, but we also do a lot of outreach going out into the community and into group homes, day programs, that kind of thing, and especially special education classrooms where they often don't have any access to school-based music programs, and so we sort of fill that void of providing music there. And in Ottawa, it tends to be self-contained classrooms, so most often like a physical support program classroom, or autism classroom, that kind of thing. My background is as a music teacher. I still teach. I teach basically just private music lessons now, but I did do a lot of group teaching. We do a lot of camps at Lotus Center, but now I'm mostly the executive director of Lotus Center, but I still always keep a foot in teaching as well.
Thank you very much, Erin. And in a very typical way, I forgot to say that this fat old lady with gray hair forgot to say who I am. So thank you for that. We'll move on to Rory McLeod.
Hi, everyone. As Ellen said, my name is Rory McLeod. I am a very tall white man with brown hair. Today, normally I wear glasses, but today I'm wearing contacts. I'm wearing black pants, a burgundy shirt, and this very cool, my favorite jacket. It's black with gold stars and a big lotus flower on the back. Thank you. Cheers for clothing. It's lovely. So I work with Xenia Concerts, which is an organization that works with the disability and neurodiversity communities to redesign concert experiences and make them more accessible and more inclusive for people who face barriers to attending what you might call a typical or traditional concert. So the context that we work in is we're concert presenters, but we also offer professional development training for every artist that works with us. We work with both disabled and non-disabled artists, and people who identify as neurodivergent as well work with us. What else can I say? I would say that in our journey as an organization, Ellen sort of touched on this a little bit, that within a lot of structures and systems, there is an inherently patronistic power structure, right? Within a lot of charities, within a lot of organizations that are designed to support the needs of people whose needs are not met currently in society. Our organization is really working towards going from working for a population or group of people with particular needs to working with that population. And we hope that in the long run, we can work as an integrated community of people with disabilities, people without disabilities, people who identify as neurodivergent, as neurotypical, and to work together to create spaces where people have their needs met and they can just be themselves. End of thought.
Thank you, Rory. Hey, Mike.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mike Carter. I'm a high school teacher. Actually, I'll describe myself. I'm a white guy with curly brown and gray hair wearing khaki or tan pants and a maroon collared shirt with white specks on it. And I wear glasses. I'm a high school teacher in Alberta, in Lethbridge, Alberta. I am also a PhD student in education at the University of Lethbridge. My teaching position has me leading the support of disabled students at my high school, which means I guide a team of about 20 educational assistants, and I lead other teachers in making their classrooms more accessible and more in order to foster belonging for disabled students. I also teach a grade 11-12 disability studies class at my high school, and I lead the jazz band at my high school. Yeah. Last year, I stepped away from my job, and I spent the year in Toronto, where I connected with disability arts organizations, and I met and presented alongside some of the people sitting next to me. I began my teaching career as a middle and high school band teacher, and I come to music from the perspective of a jazz saxophonist. That's a bit about me. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mike. Adam.
Hi, everyone. My name is Adam Bell. I'm a white, middle-aged man. I have orange-colored hair. I'm wearing a black N95 mask, a blue and yellowish plaid shirt, and green pants. I work at Western University. I'm in the area of music education, and my job is to be a researcher, and my research is all based on community models. So I say we because I'm always working with other people, so other researchers and people who work for community-based organizations. So a lot of disability organizations, disability arts organizations, and we think about access as relational. So not access as a checklist, but something you figure out together. And we ask, like, well, what is access in our contexts? How do we make that better for music making? And we've looked at lots of different things, and we're always working on them, but examples include making instruments or designing interfaces, making opportunities for disabled artists to have a music career, thinking about how we teach and learn, and thinking about kinds of access that sometimes get forgotten, like remote access. A lot of people were doing sea shanties during COVID, and then, kind of gave up on that, but lots of people still need remote access. So we're always thinking about access in our work, and that's kind of the theme that guides us. And it's a pleasure to be here with everyone. Thanks.
very much, Rory. I just can't resist saying, you are so not middle-aged. Daniel.
Yeah, my name is Daniel. I want present to Stephanie from Venezuela. Stephanie, translate for you. Stephanie, habla, please.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Could you listen? Could you listen?
I can
Ok, voy a empezar. La historia de mi vida con la inclusión o herramientas inclusivas dentro de la música es muy especial.
So my life story with inclusion and inclusive tools for music is very special.
Porque yo viví los dos mundos que conlleva la accesibilidad. El primer mundo, que es donde no había herramientas para personas ciegas, ni computadoras, ni teléfonos. Y el segundo mundo, donde ya tenemos una excesiva globalización.
It's special because I got to live both parts. The first part being when there weren't any aids or tools like computers and phones that made music and things accessible for blind people. And the second one, that's now where globalization has made it possible for having excessive resources.
Tengo la fortuna y el orgullo de pertenecer a uno de los movimientos más hermosos que hay con la música, que es el Sistema de Orquestas Juveniles y Coros de Venezuela.
I have been lucky and privileged enough to, and I'm proud of be part of the National System of Youth and Children's Orchestras and Choirs of Venezuela.
Este es un sistema muy hermoso creado por el maestro José Antonio Abreu, donde se fomenta la práctica colectiva de la música para la excelencia del ser humano.
This is a beautiful system created by the educator and conductor Abreu for the collective practice of music to grow as excellent and good people in society.
Y como ya podrán imaginar, buscar la forma de incluir a personas como yo, ciegas, en ese primer mundo donde no existía ni teléfono ni computadora, era completamente un reto.
And of course, it was a way to integrate people like me who are blind into that first world where there weren't resources such as computers and phones. There were nothing in the moment.
Cada uno de mis profesores tuvo la oportunidad de observar cuáles eran las herramientas en donde yo era más hábil y a través de esas herramientas de inclusión fabricadas por mí mismo, buscaron la forma de yo desarrollarme.
So each of my professors got to evaluate in which areas I excelled most, and through that they helped me develop for myself my own inclusive tools to develop myself.
Yo soy trompetista desde que tengo 8 años y todos ustedes saben, si conocen la música clásica, de que las obras son muy largas, son bastante largas. Y aunque conozco el sistema braille, siempre fue de utilidad y todavía lo es mi oído.
So I have always been a trumpeter, have always played the trumpet. And even though I read Braille, these pieces are something that was very useful for me was my listening ability for music.
Y actualmente soy compositor y tengo ya herramientas con las que puedo trabajar, pero si no fuera por todo el tránsito de, de una vida sin tantas herramientas tecnológicas, sino con mi propio ingenio, no pudiese trabajar ahora. Así que puedo decir que en este momento las herramientas de inclusión educativa me ayudan bastante, pero eso no fuera posible si no fuera por todo el trabajo académico y personal que desarrollé de niño.
Now a composer, and this wouldn't have been possible without all the work and academic studies and inclusive tools that I had throughout my life when I was a child.
Thank you very much.
You very much. Wow, technology, eh? Wow, that's great. Okay, so I wonder if we could follow up with each of you, and just maybe if you can talk about one kind of challenge or barrier, and then one kind of strategy that you use. You know, it's like when we got together on Zoom to talk in advance of this, we spent half an hour talking about all the systemic issues that are barriers. And then we agreed we wouldn't talk about those, but maybe it's worth just saying a little bit about that, and then how you work to create transformative spaces in your practice.
I think for me, especially, you know, because I work a lot with schools and school systems, or I tend to get the students, like at Lotus Center, we teach a lot of private music lessons. We do groups, we have rock band, we have singing collective, we have all different kinds of programs. But we often get students coming that have tried to take lessons from other teachers and have been turned away, or the teacher just didn't have the tools, which is okay. I think it's okay to say I don't have the tools to teach the student right now, but often it can be traumatic or hurtful for the student to be turned away. And so I think that there's a barrier there for sure with tools for teachers. And a big part of the work that we do is professional development. That was my doctoral research, was training music teachers, studio music teachers, especially to work with autistic students, because I think particularly studio music teachers have very, very few tools available to them. And most studio music teachers went to school studying their instrument and didn't go through, you know, teachers college or anything like that. So they have very few tools. And so students come up against this barrier so often that they're trying to find a teacher, and they, you know, find teachers that, even if they will accept them, might not be equipped to adapt fully in the way that needs to be adapted, because it needs to go far beyond, okay, well, I teach this method and I will use color coding for you. I mean, that's fine. It's great to do that. And some students, that's all they need. But sometimes it needs to be a much less formal, traditional approach, right? It needs to be a new conception of what music engagement looks like with the student. And it needs to be very based on just that student's experience. And so a strategy that we use a lot at Lotus Center is the professional development piece, because from my perspective, we can only reach so many students in Ottawa and in our four walls, but the more teachers can be equipped with that, it's exponential, right? Then they go out and they can teach other students, and then so many more students are benefiting from that. But it really, I think another barrier is we tend to teach in the system in which we learned, right? And a lot of us learned in very traditional systems. We went through the conservatory system. We probably went to university where it was very traditional. And so we tend to go on and teach that way because that's what we know. But that doesn't doesn't work for a lot of students, frankly, whether they're disabled or not. But especially for a lot of disabled students, just adapting that is not meeting their need. And so it's sort of working with teachers to sort of, it's a whole sort of, they really need to think differently about what music even is and what music making looks like, which is hard. It's hard to, teachers need to have a lot of vulnerability to do that. But I know I can talk about a lot of strategies that we use with students, but I think, since I can probably only pick one strategy to talk about now, I think that's the most important one from the work that I do and that we do at Lotus Center is the teacher training.
The teachers, yes. Okay, thank you, Rory.
Thanks. Rory speaking. I'm going to very briefly touch on one aspect of access that's often overlooked, and then I'm going to talk about another one that's maybe even a little more thorny. So the first one is sensory needs. And because Xenia Concerts started out working very closely with the autism community, the initial goal of creating and redesigning the concert experience was to create a concert environment where people's sensory needs could be met and where they could meet their own sensory needs. So some people might have sensitivities to bright lights, others might have sensitivity to sound. Some people might need to be able to move around, make noise, stim, vocalize while they listen to music. So probably the most important aspect of redesigning the concert experience was to create an environment that was adaptive and welcoming, explicitly welcoming of all of those behaviors and all of those needs. So we provide noise canceling headphones and earplugs. We provide sunglasses for people to borrow if they need them. We provide a quiet space where people can go for a short break if they become overwhelmed or they just need to get away from all that sensory stimulation for a while. And we also invite people to bring their own things from home to meet those needs. The second thing I wanted to talk about is sociocultural expectations, which is an often overlooked barrier in cultural spaces. I think it comes down largely to communication, but also the way that we inhabit spaces. So just as an example, one of the things that we do for our concerts is we create a venue guide for every venue that we work in. And that's simply a document that tells people what to expect, how to access the building, how to get there by bus and by car, and where the accessible drop-off points are, how many stairs there are if there are stairs, where the elevators are. All of this information that you can provide to people in advance of an experience gives them the opportunity to decide for themselves whether that's an experience they want to take part in. End of thought.
Oh, that's great. So, Mike, you work in a high school situation with this. What are the combinations of barriers and strategies that you employ?
I just wanted to comment quickly on Rory's welcoming. That's such a huge part that a variety of behaviors are welcomed. I haven't been to a Xenia concert, but I've been to a lot of other relaxed performances, and despite the statements, you rarely actually see anything in practice that reflects that statement. So that welcoming thing is still something I guess we've got to work at in a lot of the places that try to create relaxed performance spaces. But for my work, I think one of the biggest challenges, if I'm thinking about music and also any other discipline, and it connects to what Erin said too, is our long-held assumptions about what music education is and who it's for. Are we willing to deprioritize things like competitive festivals, ideas about normative performance, or even our foundations in dominant Western classical music? And what do I do to kind of disrupt that? I think one of the most important things we can do is we can amplify disabled voices, and we can listen to people who maybe have been traditionally marginalized. As part of my daily routine in my disability studies class, we always listen to a disabled voice. Similarly, in my music instruction, if I'm leading a jazz band, we're always listening to a recording. We're listening to the music tradition. Our world is a lot bigger than the confines of our disciplines and our institutions, and they haven't always included the participation of disabled people and other marginalized folks. And there's so much that we could say specifically, but I think just generally we need to expand our ideas of what can happen and who should be there.
Yeah. I feel like the Rich Marcella finger snap is called on here. No, but seriously, can I just, before we move on, just ask a little bit more about that? What happens in the music class when you're in a jazz band class and you play Horace Parlan or someone like, somebody who has done amazing musical innovations because of the particular way their body works? In his case, the way his hand worked on the piano changed a style of jazz. How do your students respond to that kind of representation?
I think most students respond initially just with surprise because they haven't seen that kind of representation in their school settings. And then once they've been kind of shown enough examples of and I like to pull from everyday examples of disabled folks, for instance, to push back at the inspirational stories kind of narrative that often gets perpetuated with disabled people. So once they've seen a lot of just everyday disabled people doing great things, then it becomes something they can actually look for in the world when they're out there. I ask my students to always keep their eyes open and ask, where are the disabled folks? Because a lot of times they're not there. And if that's the case, we need to ask why and what do we need to do?
See, you're taking me to school. Adam.
Well, this is Adam speaking. Nice to hear Horace Parlan referenced. It's good. You should look it up if you haven't. And to follow up on what Mike was saying, I think this aspect of disability leadership is really important, and that's something that we in our research groups look to a lot. So, for example, having a concert in which the focus is on disabled artists, that really changes the focus and the whole feel of the performance. In teaching, as an example, we're currently running a project where the whole idea was to hire lead artists, disabled artists, to be the teachers and use their experience because they have so much knowledge. I like the term like access knowledge. Disabled people are experts at access because they've experienced it. And so as an example, we hired an autistic pianist to teach keyboard skills to autistic adults, and it's going well because they get each other's access needs, so things like that I think get overlooked a lot in education. Once upon a time, I was a public school music teacher, so I get it on that level. I've talked to a lot of disabled people over the years who share a similar experience where in their music classes they felt like there weren't a lot of opportunities, and they were relegated to the percussion section, to people like myself, because I was in the percussion section, just because the teacher didn't really know what else to do with them, kind of thing. And so it kind of speaks to systems we have in place, and we're not really sure how to navigate them differently. So in my group, we think about things on multiple levels. As Rory spoke to, we think about the spaces themselves. But we also think about like the instruments work for you. Like how deep do we need to go to make the experience accessible for you? Do we need to go to the point of like starting with a new instrument? Do we need to think about the space? Also, like, who are you playing with? We need to think about the community of people we play with. So all those factors, I think, are part of the equation, and that's what we think about. And I think the successes we've had is when we start with disability leadership. That goes a long way. It sounds like an easy solution. It's really complicated doing this kind of work. There's all sorts of problems along the way, so I don't want to sugarcoat it. But it's definitely doable, and it takes like a long-term commitment. That's been my experience, and it's like the kind of roller coaster experience. But when it's right, like it's really worth it to have those moments and kind of see meaningful moments where everyone in the community, whoever that community is like, hey, we actually like pulled this off, and you kind of addicted. You want to keep doing it. So.
Adam, I've been learning a lot about disability leadership from working with you, and I just wonder if you could just say a little. Can you give us an example of that in your work of how things changed because people with disabilities were laying the protocols and leading the project?
Yeah, so the most convenient example for me is in the instrument design world. So in engineering, there's like kind of this history of people designing things for other people. So when it comes to disability kind of gets imagined, and like someone comes up with a solution and the disabled person gets it and they're like, thanks, I never needed this. The design critique Liz Jackson calls these disability dongles. So there's also this idea of co-design, and co-design has a really great intent behind it. But co-design can kind of get turned into like, well, the person was involved, but like, what was their involvement? So my group, to kind of like force ourselves to stay on track, we use disability-led design. So the idea is that if an instrument's being designed for you or with you, you're the leader of that design. All design decisions default to you. So we've been working on different projects over the years. You know, some happen really fast because the thing we need to make isn't that complicated, but some take forever and some are still ongoing. And I think it's more that long process that speaks to the leadership piece, because things like take the time that they need to take. So, and this is common in disability community, if you're part of that or know that, it's like sometimes you just got to step away from the project. Whereas like in academia, there's often a push, like we got to get this thing done. So I think that's one part that's really important, is just the time. Another really important part is compensation for people's expertise. So there's like a history in design of like the disabled person comes in and they should just be like grateful that something was made. And like there's no kind of recognition of that expertise that is manifested in the design. So finding ways to leverage grant funding, for example, to pay the person. So like that's all things that have come out of our work. And then you have something that's much more mutual and people feel good about it. So I don't know if that helps. If I can give you a concrete example to go look up on YouTube, the easy one for me to say is John Kelly and his Kellycaster guitar. That was co-designed with John and Charles Matthews. And the group I work with, they're working on the second version of it. So it's a more robust design because John is a gigging musician and he plays like Irish pub tunes. So like if he goes to a bar and like the instrument gets knocked over, as guitars do, like it's got to hold up, right? So that's just like one example, but yeah, thank you.
Danielle.
Ok. En el sistema, yo tengo la dicha y el orgullo de ser director de una agrupación musical donde la gran mayoría de las personas son ciegos.
So at the system, I have the joy and the pride of being the conductor of a group where the people in the group are blind.
Y como ustedes saben, cuando montamos nuevo repertorio, nuevas canciones, el reto no es que salga mal o bien, el reto es que se aprendan de memoria todo.
And as you know, when choosing a new repertoire for the group, the real challenge is not for it's not for us to perform well or not. It's for the group to be able to learn and memorize the music.
Puedo entender si yo tuviera algo de visión, pero tampoco tengo nada.
I could understand if it would be easier if I had some ability to see, but I can't see at all.
Recientemente nosotros vinimos a Canadá y nuestro reto era hacer no una canción en inglés, sino 7 canciones en inglés de Elton John, y somos personas que ninguno domina el idioma.
Recently, we have come to Canada to perform not only 1 but 7 songs in English, 7 Elton John songs, and it's challenging because we don't speak the language fluently.
Se pueden imaginar, son 10 minutos de música en donde prácticamente nunca se para de cantar ni hablar.
So you can imagine the challenge because it's 10 minutes of songs where we almost never stop talking or singing.
Entonces, ¿cómo pude voy a replantearlo de nuevo, olvida esto, Stephanie, por favor. ¿Cómo busqué la estrategia para lograr que todos nosotros pudiésemos aprender la letra de la canción sin entender más del 80% de lo que dice?
So you wonder, how did I look for a strategy? Like, what was my strategy for us to be able to learn the lyrics to a song that we barely understand less than 80% of it?
Ok, aquí sí voy a hacer un poquito más largo, Stephanie, pero creo que lo vas a poder explicar súper. Lo que yo hice fue dividir el aprendizaje en 2 partes. Lo primero que hice fue utilizar las herramientas del sistema como la práctica colectiva de la música a través del grupo, de la disciplina, cantando todos los coros de las canciones juntos.
So I divided music I divided the task in parts. Well, first I tried to... Sorry, ¿puedes repetirlo una vez más?
Ok, perfecto, repite. Lo primero que yo hice fue, como todas las canciones tienen estrofa y coro, hay partes donde todos cantamos lo mismo, todos juntos. Hay momentos en donde cantamos todos juntos una misma frase.
So since all of the songs have the chorus and the other parts of the song, there are some phrases where we'll sing them together.
Entonces, después de que estuvimos 2 semanas practicando lo que decíamos todos al mismo tiempo, luego me tomó 3 días que cada uno se aprendiera su estrofa individual.
So after spending 2 weeks practicing these phrases that we all sang together, then it took us 3 days for everyone to learn their specific lines, their specific verses.
Aunque nosotros en el grupo leemos sistema braille, la mayoría de los muchachos no tienen las herramientas para escribir. Así que la manera en cómo logré que ellos se aprendieran la música es grabando con una computadora y un micrófono. Grabé cada uno de sus voces y le iba pasando su parte individual para que fueran aprendiéndolo.
So even though most of us use the Braille system to read music sheets. Most of the people from the group don't have the ability of writing it. So what I did was record their voices singing, and then I would send them, their parts for them to listen and practice.
Fue un reto, pero creo que ahora lo hemos logrado.
It was a challenge, but I think we accomplished our goal. We did it pretty well.
Thank you very much.
Right. So many practical strategies there, right? Of just creating the right conditions for people to be able to participate. Thank you so much. I wonder, maybe we'd like to open up to the audience to ask questions, but maybe just before, I'll, without going in any kind of order, does anybody have something they wanted to add? Like, I guess one question I would have is just even like, what for you would be a transformative world of music? What would that look like?
I think for me, the thing that I've really learned in teaching neurodivergent or disabled students is to really prioritize relationship as a means of understanding their experience in the moment. I think in my previous teaching with neurotypical students, it was and I was taught in a very traditional setting too. It was really about, the information that I have in my head needs to go into your head, and let me just focus on that. And with my students with exceptionalities, I have to, like Rory was talking about, their sensory experience. I need to feel their sensory experience as much as I can. I need to know what their sensory experience is in the room at that moment. A lot of my students are non-speaking or minimally speaking. They can't tell me when they're uncomfortable. They'll show me, and I need to tune into that, or what their experience of the music is. I need to be so connected with them so that I'm reading what they're trying to tell me through their experience, and so that I can adapt and adjust and create the learning experience that they need. So for me, that's sort of the thing that has transformed my own teaching, and hopefully transformed the experience for the students. Is sometimes even, I don't really develop a curriculum for the student until several weeks in, because I'm just playing musical games with them and trying to get to know them and create a relationship, because they also may have had not great educational experiences and need trust, need sort of relational safety. And part of that is connection. So I think for me, that's what's most transformative as a teacher. And then I think for my students as well.
That's wonderful. And you really I love that word attunement, right? If teaching wasn't about transmission of information, but about attunement, then that would be indeed transformative. Mike, you look like you have something to add.
Just one thing I wanted to add. There's lots of disabled people doing exciting things that we should work alongside and bring into our classrooms. One thing I learned when I was living in Toronto last year is just how much is happening in the disability community, how much, and it also connects to the importance of letting disabled people choose to be together. I know we've got harmful legacies of institutionalization and special education. Yes, I just said that. Special education is a harmful legacy that I'm working against. But despite that, disabled people can be together. We should be together. I learned so much from other disabled people. And Mia Mingus, a disability justice scholar, talks about this concept of access intimacy when we're together as disabled people, and we can kind of just let go of all those, let go of those expectations of the non-disabled world in a way that you can't in other situations. So reach out to disabled people, check out what disabled people are doing, and don't think that disabled people together is a bad thing, because it's not.
Yeah. Wow. I think that's a really potent thing that you brought to a conference and concert event that we shared in May. This idea that it's one, we're always showcasing, we're always sort of saying, look, 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 because we're trying to get people to pay attention. But that's not what's needed. It's not all that's needed, right? Yeah. Anybody else wanted to talk to this question of transformation? What's transformational for you? What do you aspire to? Go ahead, Roy.
Yeah, I think the lesson that's been driven home for us again and again in our organization is that when you take accessibility into account from the very beginning of designing something, everyone benefits. And I just wanted to share a little story from this week. We have a new partnership with the Canadian Opera Company Free Concert Series. And has anyone live in Toronto? Anybody been to one of those concerts? Yeah, okay. So typically they take place, they're free to attend, they're at noon on a weekday. There is sort of a regular group of people that come to these concerts, and typically it's what you would expect of a traditional classical music concert in presentation style and in the audience's response and the concert etiquette and those social cultural expectations that I was talking about earlier. So what's interesting on Wednesday is that we had maybe 20 students come from a school, all of whom were neurodivergent, who came specifically because it was an adaptive concert. And then about 75% of the audience was just everyday concert goers who didn't even know that they were coming to an adaptive concert. And to watch what happened over the course of 55 minutes of just being in an environment where they were encouraged to participate, to maybe make some art while they listened. We handed out percussion instruments. We had people sing along to things. The general feeling in the room was just so much more at ease and more comfortable by the end of that hour than any other traditional classical music concert I've ever attended. So it was just really interesting to see the way that people open up to the experience, and like it's sort of like the dissolution of the binary, right? Of that binary thinking you either need this or you don't, you're either disabled or you're not. For me, that's what transformation looks like, is that the moving away from binary thinking.
For sure. Danielle, did you want to add anything?
Okay. Para mí siempre es un placer darme cuenta de que a pesar de estar en países diferentes, nos enfrentamos a retos muy parecidos.
For me, it's always a pleasure to realize that even though we are in different countries, we face similar challenges.
Sabemos muy bien que Venezuela es un país que, aunque tiene unos muy lindos valores en accesibilidad, todavía en infraestructura y en herramientas tecnológicas nos falta mucho por aprender, o nos falta mucho por avanzar.
We know that even though Venezuela has very nice values when it comes to accessibility, there are many things to work on still regarding infrastructure and tools to improve this accessibility.
Sin embargo, me doy cuenta de que a pesar de que cada país y cada cultura es diferente, nos enfrentamos a retos que nos transforman la vida a cada día.
I realize that even though we come from different cultures and from different countries, we face challenges that transform our lives every day.
Por eso, como sistema, aún más defiendo la idea de que la música es universal. E independientemente de dónde vivamos, de dónde estudiemos y de dónde estemos, siempre va a ser un reto ser mejor cada día en la práctica de algo tan hermoso como la música.
That's why for me the system is so beautiful, and it reinforces my idea that music is a universal experience that's supposed to help us improve who we are each day.
Cuando tenga más conocimiento del inglés, prometo comunicarme con cada uno de ustedes porque siento que son profesores extraordinarios y me gustaría aprender más de ustedes.
When I get to improve my English, I promise to communicate directly with each of you because I think you are all extraordinary professors and I would love to learn more from you.
Me encanta aprender y nunca dejaré de aprender. En el momento en el que yo sienta que deje de aprender, en ese momento tendré que morir.
I love to learn and I'm never going to stop. The moment I feel like I have to stop learning, then I guess I'll have to die.
Sigamos creciendo juntos, que todavía nos quedan muchos años para aprender y disfrutar.
Let's continue to grow and evolve together because we still have many years to do so and to learn.
Thank you very much.
Bravo.
Enjoy.
Okay, thank you. A hand, please. And I want to thank you for making this event accessible for you. You came with the technology for translation, and you joined us despite a very busy touring schedule and transportation difficulties. So I really appreciate the huge effort that you have made, and for all of Los Somos to come and attend this session. It's much appreciated. Yeah. We're nominally out of time, but I'm going to just take a question or two if we can. Yeah, please, Wendy.
Thank you so much, everybody. My name is Wendy Stewart. I'm a pediatric neurologist, and a lot of my patients with cerebral palsy, because of their motor difficulties with speaking, are now using eye gaze systems, which has totally transformed their lives, and people realize they were in there. And I was just wondering if any of you are using the eye gaze systems to facilitate music composition and performance.
We have just started at Lotus Center. We recently got a grant from TELUS to purchase adaptive instruments. So we have purchased an iHarp and have just started working with that. So I cannot really report on it a lot yet, but we're very excited about it too, because I think it's vital for students and we have, we use the Adaptive Use Musical Instrument app, which, is movement based, but for students that even struggle with that, to have the eye gaze technology is incredible.
Other questions? I know there's a lot been going on for a long time, and we're close to the end. Okay. I will just make a plug for the Adaptive Use Musical Instrument app. It is free, and AUMI app.org, I think, is the address for it. And it's for iOS. It's how I got into this world a little bit. And the whole idea from Pauline Oliveros, who first developed it, was that the person with the least possible voluntary mobility ought to be able to improvise. And that improvisation itself could be a flexible way of making music that would provide access. So there's a lot of different valences here. And I'm also aware, Adam, that I skipped over you, so I just wanted to give you a last opportunity to say anything.
Mike spoke precisely what I was going to say. You were asking about what would be transformative, and for me, like, what has been transformative in my life is engagement with disability culture. And my hope, for the future, is that disability culture is infused in people's experience of musical culture writ large. So I'm always telling people, like, go listen to this artist, like go listen to Miss Jackie, go listen to Molly Joyce, They're just really cool artists, and I like their music, and I don't have the words to do their music justice, and I think that's perfect because I shouldn't, because it's music. So, like, I don't have the words, but I would just encourage you, like, go experience disabled artists and just kind of like leave it at that, because that's what's been transformative for me and a lot of people I know, and I want other people to have that experience.
It's a great way to end. Would you please join me in thanking Dr. Aaron Parks and Roy McLeod, Mike Carter, Adam Bell, and Daniel Coronado.